Two, one. Hello, friends. Welcome. We did it. This is the first lecture of week one. So excited to be with you guys. My name is Will. I'm going to be your instructor for the next 8 weeks. I promise you guys, it is going to fly by. It is going to go so quickly. If this is your first stack, I promise you, you will be able to accomplish so much more than you thought you could. Or hopefully you think you can do anything in the world, because you probably can. And if it is your second or third stack, then you know how quickly these full stack things can go. So before I introduce myself, I'll let Gray introduce themselves and kind of let you guys know who they are. That's going to be our teaching assistant. Again, talked about this in office hour. Gray is goated, very awesome, incredible TA. So, Gray, if you want to introduce yourself one more time.
Sure. Hey, all. My name is Tia Gray. My full name is Justina Gray. You can literally call me either one. It does not matter. I do typically go by Tia Gray, but if you like Justina, listen, say Justina. It's all good. So I'm born and raised New Yorker. I actually live out here in South Kakalaka, South Carolina. Enjoy my son living. I've been at the boot camp for about almost close to a year and a half. Started off with Will as my instructor for Django, and but I took 2 stacks when I was here, Python and MERN. MERN has my heart. Python trying to get up in there though. I come from a non-technical background, so for all you folks who is like, oh man, how can you do it? Just ask me. I think I'm doing all right. And I come from like more customer service, human services. And I transitioned into tech because I really wanted to make apps for the industry. So that's what I'm in the midst of doing, as well as learning a lot of data science, because something about data that is just really interesting. Research gets me every time. So that's a little bit about myself. And yeah, I'm here with Will, my second cohort with him. If I can and will throw extra office hours if you need, so holler if you need me. And one proponent about me, if you need help, I will help you. I may give you some tough love, but if you need help, I will help you, because I want to see you succeed. And just because we struggle doesn't mean that we can just give up. So I will push you and encourage you in the right direction. But I know with my struggles, I know Will was here. He was just like, listen, it's hard, but you can do it. So that's what I'm here. If anyone needs help or assistance, please, even if someone to just talk to, because coding can make you cry. Okay, I'm gonna be the first one to say it can make you cry. So if you're close to like, man, I don't know what to do, holla at me. Come talk to me one-on-one. Just let me know. So one thing I'm a proponent of, please say something. We cannot help if you don't say anything. So we're happy to help. We love to help. I also like to talk to people, as you can hear. So that's a little bit about me. If I left something else out, let me know. Oh yeah, I have a little bit of dev experience as well. Work with React, Next.js as well, and learning a lot with data science. So if you are a Python person, a JavaScript person, come see me. Java, I'm sorry, go see Jason. But that's it. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Gray. Great. My name is Will. I'm your instructor. We had some fun in office hour, just kind of talking. The back half, we talked a little bit about class and what to expect to an extent, not very much. We're going to talk a little bit more in depth today. Today's very chill. It's not a syllabus day. We're still going to talk about some stuff, but I want to lay some ground rules and just kind of some expectations from you. Before we do that, just want to give you a little bit of my background. My name is Will. I am your instructor. I've been with Coding Dojo for 3 years now. Started as a TA, then was an instructor, and I actually left teaching. I went and worked at Twilio, and I went and worked as a developer, and then was TAing the entire time just because I love tech and I love teaching, and I think there's so much power in empowering people to learn. I just love it, and I think like code and tech can change your life. And so I'm really passionate about that. So did some self-reflecting and was also TAing a lot. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to TA this much, I might as well come back and teach because that's what I really have a lot of passion in doing. And it's like the best end to a long work day is to come and be with you guys and instruct and teach and help you understand with that. I am in Seattle, so I'm on Pacific Standard Time or Pacific Daylight Time. I don't know which one. I think we voted on getting rid of one of them, but here we are. So really, really, really excited to be with you guys. It is going to be a grind. Gray talked about it, but I promise you, if you try, that's all I'm saying. Just try. I promise you, you can do it. And Gray and I are here to help. Yeah, just a little bit about me. Again, I'm in Seattle. There's two things. Well, I'm married. My wife's in law school. She's brilliant. She's amazing. She's going to change the world. And we have two fur children. No real children, but no like little skin puppies. But we got actual dogs. This one's name is Marley. She is almost 8. She is goofy and weird. And I do have to let you know, she has epilepsy. And what that means is sometimes, and it is kind of random. Sometimes it happens in a cohort, like it happened last cohort. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But if she has a seizure, it usually lasts. She's good. She just has epilepsy. We don't know what causes it. She just, I don't know, seizes. So if that ever happens, I might just say, hey, I got to go for a second. I'll try to pause if I can, but I usually won't. I just might be gone for, they usually take about 2 minutes, and she kind of comes out of it in like the next 2 or 3 minutes. And I'll make sure that she's in a space that's safe for her. And then I'll come back to class. So just wanted to forewarn you, if there ever is a time I go like, oh, I gotta go, and I'm kind of panicking, that's what it is. It's not just my house is on fire. I'm not getting murdered or anything. My dog's just having a seizure. So that's Marley. We call him Margie. And then this is my best friend. And yeah, Gray will be here, but my best friend, love Marley, but this is Charlie. He looks like Falcor. This is him just with a wig on, and he just let it happen. He's a Labradoodle, but he still sheds. I told my wife there was one condition about getting a second dog is it couldn't shed. And so she really fleeced me in a lot. I went and picked him up when he was a puppy, and he looked like a normal lab, and I had hair everywhere. And she's like, oh, that's just his puppy hair. He'll grow out of it. Then he won't shed again. And this dog sheds so much, but he's my little best friend. He's currently at my feet. So that's Charlie and Marley. Again, Marley is the one who's got some seizures, but hopefully that doesn't happen this stack. So it's kind of a hit or miss. So that is a little bit about me. Love coding, love development, really, really, really excited to jump in to this. And MERN's a really cool, really, really cool language. It's a lot. And I'm just going to like lay it out there. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Can you do it? Absolutely. Anybody can learn this. But it is a little bit different than other ones because you're dealing with a front end and a back end. But I promise you, Gray and I will be here along the way to hold your hand or to assist you or guide you or do anything like that. So cool. So there's some introductions. I will do this every class. You will get so tired of hearing it, but I'm just going to do it. So that way, if anybody ever says, well, I didn't know, it's like, that's absolutely not true. You've got discussion questions. I have opened them up. I just want to let you know that there was for some reason, the next 4 weeks are open. So take with that what it is. Discussion questions are reminded or are required. You can only miss 4. So if you miss up to 5, then you have to retake the stack. Also, if you guys are not on mute, please feel free to mute. You guys, so make sure the next 4 weeks are open. Jennifer, if you don't mind, or Gray, I didn't make you. Give me 1 second. Sorry. I gotta make.
I also don't have posts. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I just realized. Sorry, guys. There you go. Cool. So discussion questions, you have 2 of them due by 11:59. This is PST, so Sunday. You also got 3 core assignments. Your core assignments this week are predict destructuring. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. Convert to arrow and then prop it up. You can kind of think about this. It's not always going to be the case, but this is what we'll talk about today. Talk about this tomorrow, and then Thursday we're going to talk about prop it up. Again, it's not always going to be how it lays and how it goes, but that's how this week is going to be. I will also send, and you guys should have gotten this, I will send an email every Monday, basically saying, I call it This Week in MERN, week 1 or week 2, or et cetera, et cetera. And what that is just a layout of everything we're going to do that week, your discussion questions, your assignments, and then what we're going to talk about in lecture. And then I try to use I use like a tip or trick of that week, powered by ChatGPT. We're going to talk about that here in a second. That's going to be a bigger topic. But I try to let you guys know ahead of time what you are expecting and what you're expecting to learn. So that way, if you can only make one lecture, but there's something you're really struggling with, at least you know when we're going to talk about it. So that way you guys can kind of plan accordingly. Just as you know, lectures are not required. I do suggest them for sure. But everything is recorded. We'll look at the tools here in a second. But everything is recorded. So that way, if you do need it, we can make sure that we get that to you and for you. Cool. Any questions on this stuff? Also, the way I sort of formulate my class and we'll see this more in code, is I like to talk on a topic, because what I've noticed is sometimes people ask questions that I'm already planning on answering. And so if you guys could obviously make sure that you are on mute, unless you have something to say, feel free to unmute. But if you guys are just kind of hanging out or listening or coding along, especially if you got a mechanical keyboard, just stay on mute. And then I will ask at the end of every sort of section or every new topic, I will say, hey, are there any questions? So that way, you know, class isn't interrupted and it's on a topic or something I'm about to cover. So if you guys could just work with me there, just to make sure that maybe and at the end, if I don't answer your question, then I'm happy to answer it, but we want to make sure that everybody's learning style is, or everybody's learning is sort of running in full speed. That being said, I do want to encourage you. I try to use visualizations. I try to explain things. I try to explain how things are in the industry and how we're doing it here. Sometimes I do look a little bit different than what our platform looks like, just because I think that maybe there's an easier way that you're going to understand it, or you'll know something. So I might do that. But if there's ever a thing that I can do to help you learn more, if it's more visualizations, last class we had somebody suggest to show what are we going to build before we build it, and that was really helpful for them. So I love to do stuff like that. Like I can pre-build stuff, let you know, sort of that way you get a visualization of what we're going to move towards. If there's ever anything I can do to sort of accommodate your learning style, please let me know. Again, more visualizations, more in depth of X, Y, or Z. Please just let me know that through Discord or email is going to be the best way to get a hold of me. Just email me that and I can try to build that in as best as I can. That way I can build it in, so that way you guys know, and you guys are getting catered to as much as I can. Now, obviously I can't do everything for everybody. I'm only one person and there's 65-ish people in this class, but we will try our best to accommodate everybody. Cool.
And just to add in there, you guys could always let me know if you're like unsure, if you want to be like, we have a really open policy here, but if you're like, oh man, I don't want to be disrespectful, trust me, you won't. But let us know how we can help you and assist you better. We're always open to that feedback, whether openly or privately, however you feel the need. But just let us know, and how can we assist? A week or two in, we don't gotta wait till 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Just let us know ASAP so we can change up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Cool. Great. This is just going to be a high level. You guys should, whether it's your first stack or it's your third stack, you guys should be familiar with Discord, but we are going to use Discord to communicate. That is going to be a big way. You guys should all have access to this. Cohort will. So if you guys don't have access to this, then please let me know, and I will make sure you guys all should. But if you don't, this is a great way to ask questions. Now, there's kind of two ways to ask questions. Well, there's a million ways to ask questions, but one of the main ways is going to be to ask it here, because what we encourage is to ask it in our Discord channel, because your fellow classmates, and I've already seen this happen, so great job, guys, on collaboration, but your fellow classmates might have the answer. It might just be a little bit quicker than myself or Gray or another TA. But TAs will sort of monitor. I think Brandon was in here. Yeah, Brendan was in here kind of helping and moderating as well. So if you guys have questions, it's a great place to put it. Tag me specifically if you have like a specific question, or feel free to DM me. The other way you could do it is by putting it in this MERN PT. Now, this is a general MERN, so more TAs are looking at this and going through. So if you guys have some sort of question, you guys can do this here. Just knowing that there are other MERN stacks currently going on. So If you're looking like, oh, why are they asking something? And I'm very confused. It might be that they're just a little bit more advanced there, or they're farther in the program. Like the other stack is currently starting week 5, right? And so if you do get a little bit confused, that could be the case there. Now, one thing I want to point out is if you look at the top of this guide, there's this pin. If you do this pin, here's really the biggest things you're going to need. Here's our Zoom link, our course calendar, which we're going to look at in a second, my one-on-one and an instructor one-on-one. Now, one thing I want to point out is sometimes my calendar gets very busy, and I understand that, and it is the worst. If that's the case and you're having a hard time booking a one-on-one with me, or you're having trouble on like a Monday and the next thing is like next Tuesday, two things. A, definitely try to do this MERN instructor help. This is going to be, there's an entire round robin of MERN instructors and or instructors who know MERN that can help you and assist that. And it oftentimes is much, much faster, much broader availability based on your schedule. And so basically you will see when works best for you. And then whoever is available will go kind of get plugged in there. The second thing is, you can just email me if you're really struggling and there's like, you're having a hard time, email me. And there are some meetings, because this goes off of my calendar, and there are some meetings that I'm invited to that I can go to and it'll be good, but I can also be like, I can't today. Right. I can kind of skip this. So if there ever is a point where you really, really need some help, please feel free to email me and I can work around sort of Calendly in my schedule, and then find some time to really get you assistance instead of you booking a week or 2 weeks out. So that's that. Cool. Also, there's Dojo Hall. So if you guys are having questions, Dojo Hall is a great spot. Gray is incredible. Gray, you can always reach out to Gray and see if there's some help there as well. So that's kind of getting help. Here is our class calendar. There's our lecture Zoom link. Whenever I post code to GitHub, I will put the repo here. And then every time I record something, or I will have a YouTube video or YouTube playlist of our recordings, I will put that playlist here as a hyperlink. You can find recordings in 2 spots. Well, I guess technically 3. You're going to find it here in this lecture recordings. Then I will put every lecture. So every spot here will become a hyperlink after class. That way you can just click on whatever class. You can go to the date, find the class that you want to watch. You can click that and that'll take you there. On YouTube. So these 2 are here. And then the third one is going to be within our actual program itself. There's a MERN lectures, and you can see day 1, 2, 3. You can see actually all weeks you'll have available. But once the lecture is posted, it'll be posted here. So you'll go to the week 1, day 1, and after class today, once it's fully downloaded and I put it to YouTube, then I will post it here. So that's 3 spots that you should be able to find the lectures and have availability. So that's plenty of time or plenty of ways to sort of find the lectures. Let's Google class sheet. Any questions on any of those? Cool. In our welcome email, I encourage you to download Node.js. You need to have Node.js in order for us to do certain things, in order for us to, you just need it for this course. So make sure you download Node.js. There's an entire walkthrough on the platform here. Stack orientation. You don't need that. But this intro to MERN, and you get to this node portion, and this is the entire installation. So please make sure, if you have not done that, please make sure you do that. One thing I want you to be aware of, and I saw this already in Discord, is whenever you are doing this, if you copy and paste all of this $sign technically will, like if I pull up my terminal, the $sign will already be there. So if you copy the entire thing, you're going to get an error. So if you were doing this, just do the node-v. You're not going to do $node-v because that will already be on your terminal. So make sure you just do node-v and exclude a $sign if you ever see this here. So don't like copy $node, just do node. Just something to be aware of. Great. I will be using an extension. I'm going to use a lot of extensions. Just so you guys know, if you guys are ever also questioning what an extension is doing or how did I just do that, always feel free to kind of put that in chat. and I will kind of go back. I monitor chat back and forth. Um, monitor chat back and forth, so that way I can make sure that you guys, or I'm answering questions while I'm doing that. But there's one called Code Runner. It is not at all necessary per se for you to work, but I'm going to use it. It's just going to be this tool right here. It's called Code Runner, and it allows me to run JavaScript code that has this little plus sign, so I can just highlight the code or just leave my entire file, run plus, and then it'll run my code for me. So that's a tool that I'm going to use, is Code Runner. There's other extensions that eventually we will, like, we'll talk about, like React snippets. Tomorrow we'll probably show you. I'll try to show you, as I don't want to like overwhelm you with my extensions. But there's some snippets and stuff that we can use that'll make life a lot easier. But as we get to that point, I will make sure that I introduce those to you. Cool. Now, I want to have a good conversation about ChatGPT, Bard, and GitHub Copilot. If you guys don't know, ChatGPT is an AI. I'm assuming most people know about it, but if you don't, it's an AI owned by OpenAI. And it is an incredible tool that can answer most of anything in life. And I say that sort of facetiously, but it's a tool that is really revolutionary. And I'm very pro ChatGPT. Bard is Google's version. It's newer, so it's not quite as robust. And then GitHub Copilot, we'll talk about here in a second. I just was in a meeting today about what are we going to do about ChatGPT and Bard, and how does Coding Dojo integrate the two? Because transparently, these are tools that you will need to know. I am not anti-AI. I am not anti-ChatGPT. In fact, I am very pro ChatGPT. I'm very pro Bard, more ChatGPT than Bard. I'm a little fanboy for ChatGPT. But I really want to communicate and make this clear. If you rely on ChatGPT, you are only doing yourself a disservice if you don't actually learn the code. ChatGPT is a great tool. It is incredible. It is just, a beautiful tool, and it can help you understand code. And there's a lot of really powerful ways. And I will use it during class to show you, to ask questions, to figure out prompts. But I also want to say that I know how to code. Right. Obviously, I would hope, because I'm instructing you guys. But if you guys are fully reliant on ChatGPT, it's going to be more difficult for you to fully learn the language. It's only going to kind of push that back a little bit, simply because you got to tinker and you got to learn the code in itself. And if ChatGPT is not perfect, right? So if it gives you wrong code, but you don't know what it is, you don't know that it's wrong, then that might just create more of an issue for you. And so I just want to say that I'm very pro ChatGPT. If you want it to answer some of your questions, that's fine. There's a lot of really great ways to use it. Again, I will try to emulate that in class. Same thing with Bard. But I would encourage you guys to just try to do it yourself and not just ChatGPT it. Cool. Any questions or thoughts about that? Yeah, so I see it in the chat. Yep, you're using ChatGPT for leak code. It gives you very wrong answers very confidently. That's a thing, right? And so if you know how the code works and it gives you the wrong answer, you can sit and say, I don't want to, like, oh, I know what that means, or I know that that's wrong. Cool. But if you have no idea the code, then you just copy and paste, and it can kind of get you in a little bit more trouble. So my job as your instructor is to teach you how to code. This will be part of your coding, right? This is ChatGPT is becoming the new Google, especially for development. So it's a tool that I'm not going to shy away from. And I'm not going to say, don't use ChatGPT. It's like, back in the day, like, don't use a calculator, do it all by hand. It's like, that's dumb. No, that's like not reality, right? But I just want to forewarn you that ChatGPT can give you wrong answers. And I would really encourage you to not fully rely on it, because it's just going to inhibit your own learning. Cool. That being said, there's another tool I will use in class, and I'll explain why I use it, and that's GitHub Copilot. Now, GitHub Copilot is an extension. You see this little guy right here. It's an extension. It is also it's by GitHub, but it's also it's also created by OpenAI. And it really is a fascinating tool that will allow you to autocomplete code and write a lot of code, and it can do a ton of things that I will use, and it will save us a lot of time. Now, my encouragement, I can't tell you what to do. You guys are all adults, and I'm not going to pretend that, I'm not going to, I would never know. Right. So, my encouragement is don't use GitHub Copilot yet. I tell my students, wait until after week 6 and you've taken your exam and then use GitHub Copilot. There's 2 reasons. I use Copilot because it allows me to complete code faster. Therefore, I can take more time sitting and explaining the code to you. All right, we can really in-depthly go through it. And it actually cuts down on some user errors. Like, I'm going to be transparent. I can never spell the word function correctly. I always flip the N and the C. And so you don't have to like fumble and like you see an error and I'm like talking confidently and you like, no, my code's not going to work. And you have to put it in chat and my code doesn't work because I made an error, blah, blah, blah. It eliminates a lot of that, right? So we can get through more material. And you guys can understand material a little bit more in depth, in my opinion. Secondly, is it shows sometimes more efficient ways or different ones, different ways to code, which I think is cool. Like if there's another way that we can do it, I want to show you as many options because there's tons of different types of languages and style sheets. And style sheets is like in a company, they might say like, this is how we code. This is what we write. This is what we do. This is how we declare components, or these are the XYZ. We use component versus functional, like all that stuff. And so that I try to let you guys have as robust of an opportunity to learn and see. And so I believe GitHub Copilot does that. The reason I say that you should not is because, again, similar to ChatGPT, they're both owned by the same company, OpenAI, and GitHub Copilot has given in class very, very, very wrong things, or just something outside of the box that does not make sense. But because I know how to code, I can. It's the same sort of thing. I can be like, that's not right. We're going to do something different. You guys don't know that yet. So I would really encourage you guys, plus it costs money. But I'd really encourage you guys to not use GitHub. Again, you guys are adults. I think that your learning will be inhibited a little bit if you're relying on Copilot, because when you're in a job interview, you can't use Copilot and we're going to talk about jobs and stuff towards the end, but you can't use Copilot. And I don't think you can use ChatGPT yet. So I would really just encourage you guys not to. Again, you guys are adults, but that is my forewarning. Again, with what Billy is saying, like you're here to learn, right? And you're paying loads of money to learn, not just like press tab on an AI. So that would be my encouragement. Again, you guys are adults, but that is sort of my stance on AI and where we stand and what I will do. Again, I will do Copilot, again, because I think that I can explain things like more in depth. It just allows for a lot more sort of use cases and stuff. But yeah. Any questions on any of these important tools?
Not much of a question, but more of a statement. Just also be careful with some of these other extensions. I have noticed that doing some tests, with some of the extensions that are powered technically by OpenAI, but they're not necessarily the latest version. They're actually running on a way earlier version. They will they will give you completely different and and wrong answers. So like, no, don't.
Yeah. And it will give you wrong answers. It can give you, it's a really cool tool if you know how. And the reason I encourage you guys and I show this is transparently, since Copilot is launched, and Microsoft launched the stat, but Microsoft owns GitHub, that 54% of all code on GitHub since the launch has been written on GitHub Copilot. Every developer I know uses Copilot. It is a tool that I don't want to shy away from and you not know. And then you get into a job and they're like, why aren't you using Copilot? And you're like, I've never used Copilot, right? So I try to show you how that is, because I'm in the industry, right? I know what people are using. And so I want to prepare you guys as best as you can. And part of that is for you to learn the tools and see the tools in action and see how different things work. And I can always give like an office hour explanation of GitHub Copilot or best practices for Chat GPT. But again, you guys are here to learn and you would just be cheating yourself. Could you technically pass this course by using these? Probably, just transparently. But when you get to a job interview and they're asking you things about React, you're not going to know because you just relied on a tool that you can't use in the job interview. So part of my job is to prepare you for that. So that's where that comes from. So thank you so much for that statement as well. Cool. Any other questions?
Also, we could tell, by the way. So Coding Dojo has their distinct way that we teach. So if you do, we'll ask you, we'll say, hey, do you know what this code means? As long as you know, because some people have coding experience. If you have coding experience, you can explain to us like what this code means. Because sometimes we even see some new things. I'm like, what did this function do?
Yeah.
So just be sure you know what the code is doing if you're going to use tools like that. But the hard way though is the better way.
Yeah. And I think that also, I just want to communicate that goes for everything. Like if you guys are using Stack Overflow, you guys are welcome to use the internet, right? Like there's no job that's going to tell a developer, write this entire thing, but don't use Google. Like that's silly. But even if it's not ChatGPT, if you have something really complicated and we see it and we're like, hey, help me understand, and you have no idea, right? That's where the issues and the kind of academic dishonesty stuff can come in. So make sure that at least if you guys are using code, understand what it's doing. Again, you're only hurting yourself. Honestly, if you find code on Stack Overflow, put in ChatGPT and say, what is this doing? And it can tell you that as well. So it is a tool. It is helpful. It is something that you can do. Like Jason said, oftentimes at jobs, you just have a whiteboard or you have some sort of IDE in a job interview, and that's all you have to go off of. You don't have any of these tools. So we want to make sure we're preparing you. Cool. Okay. We've got about 30 minutes left. I try to be about on time as much as I can. Again, there's a lot of stuff in this doc. So there might be sometimes I go 10 or 15 minutes over. Don't ever feel like you have to stay for that. But that's just something that, I try to get through the material, but also try to be valued, try to value your time. So for the next 30 minutes, we've got a fairly simple walkthrough. We're going to walk through a full stack application and kind of talk a little bit about how MERN's different than Java or Python or just your front end stuff that you might have just come from. And then we're just going to go into some basic stuff where we're going to talk about strings and kind of how to declare those, numbers, Booleans, arrays, objects, and then destructuring objects and arrays. Now, tomorrow we will talk about arrow functions, and we will talk a little bit more about ES6 versus ES5. Now, all of that material is coming from here. It's going to come from not React, silly goose. It's going to come from these fundamental things right here. So ES5 is ECMAScript 5 and ES6 is ECMAScript 6. So we're going to look at all of this information here, ES6 and beyond. So we'll talk about like let var const tomorrow, and then we will talk about arrow functions as well. Today, we're going to talk about destructuring and maybe rest spread. Cool. Great. So let's jump in. I do want to talk about, I'm going to bring in, I'm just going to say full stack txt. So I'm going to draw a little bit. Sometimes I come with actual photos. Sometimes I just draw as I communicate. So we are going to draw a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to talk about what is a full stack application. Can anybody tell me just any sort of proponents or any sort of aspects of a full stack application? You guys can come off mute. You can put it in chat.
There's usually a backend, like a database.
Yeah. So that's two things, right? You sort of have, so we'll look at database, right? So we got some sort of database. We can call this our DB. What else is there?
Yeah, the front end, like HTML.
Yeah, so we got a front end. Let me change this. Oh, wait, it looks not so bad. LOL, how to send our div sort of thing. Yeah, so then we're going to have our front end. I'm going to call it this. And our front end is going to have a couple things with it, right? So we're going to call this front end. And then that front end is gonna have HTML. What else is it gonna have?
Yes.
Yes.
CSS.
Yep.
Yeah. And oftentimes
JavaScript.
JavaScript. Yeah, JavaScript. Guys, for typing for a living, I am the worst typer, just so you know. Cool. And then what else do we have? What's the one other thing we're sort of missing here?
Like
So
the
go to-
controller?
The backend.
Yeah, backend, right? So controller would be
Oh.
part of our backend. I don't like that actually. I'm gonna make sure that we undo that. Yeah, so our backend, right? And so a controller will live in the backend. But we're gonna have some sort of backend where we can have some sort of information. Backend. We're gonna have some sort of logic in here to handle requests from our front end, right? And yeah, we're gonna use Express and Node.js and Mongoose to be some of our middleware. But the real thing I want to talk about is sort of our request response cycle, right? So from our front end, our user is on our front end and they are clicking around, they're looking at our website, and they're going to click on, they want to create a user, right? I use Facebook a lot just because I think everybody's pretty familiar with that. So they want to click on create a user, or yeah, we'll just say create a user. Well, they're looking at some HTML, CSS, JavaScript, some functionality. There's some other stuff there. And we're also going to bring in React, but they're going to look around. And when they go to create a user, a form's going to come up, right? And they fill that form out. And now they want to save that user. They want to create that user. So what's going to happen is they're going to make a request to our backend. They filled out our form. They want to create a user. Our backend is going to handle the logic. Now we're going to lay out how and what exactly it is expecting. Like if a user is being created, or if we are retrieving all of my friends or something like that, right? So there's some sort of logic that's going to take in that request, and it is going to do one of two things. Well, there's a few things it can do, but if it needs to, it's going to make a request to the database, right? And retrieve some information or create some information. If I want to create a user, it's going to give that logic, make a request and tell the database, I want to create a new user. Here's all the information. Database is going to take that and it's going to give let me actually undo and I'll do a different color. It's going to give a response, right? So once it receives that, if everything's good to go, it gives a response back to our backend. And it's like, cool, this is a good status 200. This was successful. We created our user. And then what's going to happen is our backend is going to have some logic that's going to say, now I want to show blank. I want to go straight to the user dashboard, or I want to go back and make the user log in, some sort of information there, right? So then it's going to take that request and then it figures out what it needs to do and it gives it back to the front end, right? And tells the front end what to do. Or back to my user. Cool. I've now created a user, right? And now I've taken you to this user dashboard, and it's just a cyclical cycle over and over and over again, where the user's interacting with our backend or with our database. If it wants to get all of its friends, it makes another request. If it just wants to get the user's dashboard page, we still go and grab the information from our user. But it is just this beautiful flow of requests where it goes from front end to back end figures out, do I need to talk to my database? Do I just need to reroute? How do I handle this? Okay, I do need to talk to my database. So it goes, database is like, great, here's the information you requested. Cool, let me give this to my front end. And then our user has a valid experience, or a good experience, not just a valid experience. Now, the way we do this in MERN specifically is we are going to use HTML and CSS, but then we're going to use React as our front end. Now, React, we're going to talk about it more in depth tomorrow, but React is going to be our front end. It is a functional front end, and it's going to be what we call a single page application. We'll get more into depth of what that means. And that is going to handle all of our front end stuff, all of the things our user sees, all of the things our user can interact with is going to be through React. Now, our back end, we're going to use Node.js. But within Node.js, we're going to have Express is going to be our framework of how Node.js is going to be laid out. And we're going to use some sort of middleware as well that I'll talk about here in a second. And for our database, we're going to use MongoDB. Now, MongoDB is a non-relational database. So if you're coming from Java or if you're coming from Python, that whole idea behind many-to-many and one-to-many, throw that out the window. We don't have relationships anymore. If you are coming from web fundamentals, don't even worry about it. Don't even need to know what a non-relational database is, because we're not dealing with it, or what a relational database is, because we're not dealing with it. Really, this is just going to be a way that we're going to store some information about users, about whatever we're doing. Now, the last thing we are going to use is, in order for Node.js to communicate to our MongoDB or our Express, right? Express is like our middleware that allows us to communicate or allows us to do certain things. In order for that, we could do one of two options. We could write some sort of MongoDB queries, which we have the availability to, or we can use a tool called Mongoose. And Mongoose is just going to be a tool that allows us to basically use methods to communicate to our database, and it makes the queries for us. So I promise you guys, if you guys are coming from Java or Python, you're going to lose your mind at how easy validations are, at how easy requests are to Mongoose. You don't have to write SQL queries or not have to write any of that. It's just basically like create, and that's it. So it's going to be really, really easy, but this is this is sort of a full stack. Now there's a million other things you could bring in, and sometimes it gets a little bit bloated, but from a very, very, very high level, this is all we're doing. We are going to have a React front end, and with this, I kind of am making it seem like it's not that big of a deal. React in itself is its own language, or it's a library. Sorry, it's not its own language. It is a JavaScript library. So it's a ton of information. Still uses JavaScript, but there's a lot of things that we can do with it. Node.js is a JavaScript backend, right? So that's what we're going to use for our backend, and Express is going to come in there as our framework. And then we're going to use MongoDB and Mongoose in order to store some data and have that. So from a very high level, this is what we're doing. One thing to note is, one of the questions is, how is this different than Python or Java if you're coming from any of those? What is different is, in those other stacks, what you did is you just sort of created and worried about Flask, or you worried about Java as a backend, right? And you had HTML, you had CSS, and you had JavaScript potentially. Probably not JavaScript. Honestly, they probably just threw it out and said use Bootstrap. I'm very pro Bootstrap, so we will be using Bootstrap. I'll do a walkthrough if you don't know, if you've never used it. It's very, very simple. But that's all you had to focus on, right? You had some sort of database, you focus on the queries. Here, we sort of have one more additional piece. We're going to have Node.js as our backend. We still have a database, Mongo. We have Mongoose that's kind of doing stuff for us, but now we're introducing a front end. We're now introducing React. So we sort of have one more additional piece that we're going to do. And that kind of makes it feel, if you're coming from Python or Java, transparently, it might make it feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, this is so much information. But we're going to get there. And I promise you, we're going to handle it, and it'll all be a-okay. If you're coming from web fundamentals, you guys buckle up. It's going to be amazing. We are going to learn some fun stuff, and you're going to have a lot of tools, and you really are building full stack. What's kind of cool with React is you can pair it with a Java backend or a Python backend or tons of different backends. So if you guys are wondering, React is very, very malleable, and you can kind of pair it with anything. We're doing JS because JavaScript is really, really popular. So this is a sort of high level view. Now in production, you're going to have some different pipelines, and you're going to have different things within AWS to make sure that data is being replicated, or data is being siphoned and cleaned first, or doing whether you do like a exact ETL or an ELT sort of data bringing, but we're not worrying about that. We don't need to worry about that. This is all we need to focus on for now. Perfect. Is there any questions on a full stack application? Does this make sense? Usually I put, if this is fully making sense, put a 1 in the chat. If this is not making any sense at all, put a 0 in the chat. And then if you're somewhere in the middle, just put like a point system. Wonderful. Awesome. 1.468. Love that, Tabitha. Big fan. Cool. Great. So let me clear everything I got and we will keep moving. Great. Oops, that's my Doge. Sorry, don't need that. Don't need that. Okay. So we've talked about how MERN is different than Java or Python. Again, these are high level stuff. As we keep going, we're going to continue to learn more and more and more about React and single page applications and how that's working. So this is going to be sort of a continual difference. But I do want to note, if this is your only stack, your first stack, don't feel like, oh, this is just my first stack. And if I'm saying like, oh, how you would say in Python, call me on that, because I want to make sure that everybody it kind of has an even playing field, and I don't want to rely. Sometimes I do get, sometimes I'll do it. So please just be like, hey, message me or email me, let me know that. But I try to make sure everybody's on the same playing field. And so if you are coming from web fundamentals, please, please, please don't feel like, oh, I'm behind, because you're not. We're going to be all right. And we have plenty of people pass and crush it that come from web fundamentals. So cool. Great. So we got 15 minutes left. I think that's plenty of time. We're going to talk about a few things from a very basic standpoint. We're going to talk about strings, numbers, Booleans. There's two more, undefined and null, that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about arrays and objects from a high level. You guys should have a little bit of an understanding, at least of these, whatever you come from. These ones might be a little bit more challenging. And then we're going to talk about destructuring. So let's jump in to that. Great. So I'm getting this squiggly because it doesn't like the word var. It's saying to use let and const, but we're not going to learn that yet. We'll learn that tomorrow. So I'll make sure that I change that. But for right now, var is a way that we can declare a variable, right? So here we've got just for strings, we're going to have var and then our name of whatever we want for a string. Now you might ask yourself, what is a string? Well, I don't know. Well, a string is just basically anything that is within quotations. Now you can have a single quote or double quote. My encouragement is get used to doing double quotes. And here's why. World's best students, if I wanted to do this, right? Students, hello, world's best students, right? Here's a great string. You guys are incredible. Already my favorite class. If I do this in single quotes, you can already tell that there's an error, right? Because right here, because I have this apostrophe, it thinks that this is my string, right? And I could have an escape variable, right? And I can kind of go into that, but kind of is not really a point. I mean, you can have it, but if you just have everything as double quotes, it kind of takes care of that for you. So this is our string variable. This is the name str. So if I wanted to see what that is, I can use this thing called the console. So if you guys have taken any other languages, or you should have known, at least in JavaScript, a console log, but it's different in other languages, like in Python, it's print. But if you just want to see some sort of value that's stored, I can console.log. And then here, I'm just going to console.log string. Now you see that was automatically there, and I press tab. That is from GitHub Copilot. So if your code's not doing that, don't be like, oh, my code's not working, it's broken. That's part of Copilot. But now if I come here and I do this plus, now again, this plus is from Code Runner. So I run this, I get hello, world's best students. So I've declared my variable. I have my variable name, and then I have world's best students. Now in JavaScript, I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter. So if I were to say var another str, this will work. And this is your escape character. So this will show you. So if I wanted to have the single, I have to do this escape character so it doesn't think that this is the string. Fun fact. So I could do this snake case right here. But it is industry standard that you're going to use camel case, where you've got this, this first part. If you have multiple words, the first one is lowercase, and then from there, every new word is going to be an uppercase. So here's another string. It's just a capital STR. So yeah, will it work technically will it work if you use snake case? Absolutely. It'll work fine. It'll work if these are all caps. We'll do that in environment variables in like week 7, but I just wanted to show you, this is normally how it is declared, any sort of variable, whether it's a string, a number, a Boolean, or whatever. usually use this guy right here, this naming convention. So camel is like, you know, if you've got multiple words and it's like the humps of the camel. And then snake, you can always think about it. Snake is the underscore, and that one's always associated with Python. So you think about Python and snake. So if you're like, oh, I'm using snake case, no, this JavaScript is not a snake. Yeah, thanks, Jason. And SQL. Cool. Any questions on strings? Anybody confused on this? I mean, fairly basic, but always want to stop. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So quick question. Now in Python, you can do triple quotes. Is it the same here? Like, for example, if you're writing a quote from someone who has also an apostrophe, how would you be able to go around that?
You mean, I'm sorry, I'm not following the exact question. Like an apostrophe in here?
Let's say if there's a well, I guess it can be taken care of in sorry, it can be taken care of in the front end, I guess, in HTML. But let's say if you have a quote that also has apostrophes. So, like, for example, Bill Gates said this, but I guess that's in HTML. Huh?
You mean like that?
Okay, so you put
So you can do your escape characters. So that's what
okay.
this guy was. Oh, okay, so world's best student said, and then here you can use these backslashes or four, I can't remember. I think these are backslashes. In front of it, and then it will not think that this is closing. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can just use this. Same sort, just like this. Same sort of thing. Great question, though.
So in Python, we could alternate. We could do double quotes and then single quotes on the inside. Can you do that here as well?
Honestly, that's a great question that I'm not sure about. But after class, I'm would love to investigate with you guys, try to figure it out.
I mean, could we just delete the backslash and double quote, put a single quote and run it real quick?
Okay, so just so I'm understanding, you guys are saying
Just single, yeah. Nope,
these are single quotes.
yes, and then double, yeah.
This should treat that as an apostrophe. Let's test it though. Let me save.
Boom.
Just does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, we'll also do backticks, and we'll talk about string interpolation, where we can like inject a string into that, or inject a variable into this. So like if I wanted to say, so we just jump into it, and then we got a couple minutes. So if I wanted to say var a third string str, and if I say equals and I do a backtick like this, these backticks now allow me to inject some sort of variable. So I could say one time, let's try this one time, and then I could say this, and then I could say str. Oops. And so what this does is, by doing this backtick, which is just above the tab on your left side, I can say one time, and then I can inject some sort of value in here instead of saying, and so it'll say this, but it won't have the quotation marks. And so then if I were to console log a third str, like that, I run this, and then I can inject that variable, which will be a very common thing that we do, into this actual string right here. So it's called string interpolation. In Python, it was like an F string. So it's just like a formatted string. So we can also do that. Cool. But I'm happy to, after this, after class, let's go ahead and jump in and try to figure that out. Cool. I do want to move forward because we got 5 minutes. We got a lot to go over. But we also have numbers. So whether it's a float or an integer, it's still just called numbers per se, but you can have both. An integer is just a whole number. And if I said var float equals 1.1, this is just still considered a number type, but you do have a float and you've got a float and an integer as well. Now I can do certain things to it. So I could say like console.log, and I can say num plus float. And then what that'll do is it'll take these values, and then it will console log the 2.1. So it'll take both of those values. So though it is a float plus an integer, it will combine the two. Now the value that it gets, the value, like if I were to basically take and set this as a variable, if I were to say like some variable and set that equal, it will inherit the float property because it's got the decimal and it needs that. Even if it was like 1.0 and 1, it will still inherit the float value. But you can just wanted you to see that you can take numbers and add them together as well. Booleans are just very simple things. They are true or they are false. That's all. Those are the only two values a Boolean can be. Now in JavaScript, the way we have it is lowercase t and lowercase f. Like if you were to do capital T, it doesn't know what that is. So make sure that, and I know that different languages change, kind of if it's lowercase or capital. So in JavaScript, a Boolean is going to be lowercase t, lowercase f, and we're going to use Booleans a lot when we're doing some sort of conditional statements, when we're learning if statements, and we're dealing with bringing in conditional stuff of like, okay, I only want this to work if this is operating in the same way. So Booleans is going to be something that we will get to. We'll talk about truthy, falsy probably tomorrow or Thursday. That is a big sort of thing within Java, and we'll talk, or JavaScript, and then we'll talk about comparison values as well. I'll probably do an office hour on Thursday that we go through some of these other things like conditional statements, comparison, when we're dealing with like double equals versus triple equals. What are the differences between those? We'll talk about that, and obviously that'll be recorded. So if you can't make it, you'll be able to have that as well. Cool. Any questions for these primitive types, these sort of basic types, numbers, Booleans, floats, or numbers, Booleans, and strings? Great. Cool. So there's two more things, there's also two more. There's undefined, which is just that it's undefined. So we can declare a variable without actually defining it, and its value would be undefined. And then there is null. That is inherently different than undefined. So if you ever see that like, oh, this is undefined, basically we're calling something that doesn't exist, right? Or has no value there. But we'll see that as we are building out code, and some of those errors will build that out as well. So those are two of the other primitive ones. The two I want to talk about today are arrays and objects, and then we'll destructure those as well. Where an array is a composite type that allows us to put multiple types, multiples of a type or multiples of multiple types within sort of a cluster or a group. So in this case, the way you do it for an array is we are going to have square brackets, and these square brackets are declaring that, okay, we are going to have an array. So JavaScript is expecting for there to be multiple values. Now each value is separated by a comma. So we got this like 1, 2, 3, and each value has their own index position. Does anybody happen to know what index position is the value 2? Anybody know?
It's
One.
at index
One.
1.
Index 1, exactly. The way arrays work is they have an index position. So it always starts with a 0, right? Index position 0, 1,
Let's go,
2,
T.
which is a little bit confusing sometimes. Yeah, you guys crushed it. Great job. But if I am wanting to look at a specific value, like when I wanted to see what, if I wanted just to get to, I can console.log Yeah, I'm gonna go down a little bit. Console.log. And then I can say array of 1. So I say the array's name. Then I give its index position with the brackets around it. And now if I were to run this, it's going to give me 2. If this was unicorn, I will use this a lot because I think it's fun. And that way you don't get confused, because like 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2 is kind of confusing. If I wanted to get unicorn, I'm going to keep it the same way because it's our second position. It's at index 1. And I can print. And now I get unicorn. So arrays do allow me to look up the index position of the array, which is going to be helpful for when we're handling certain things or when we're looking up certain values as well. The second one we have is what we call an object. And what an object is it's declared by a curly bracket instead of a square bracket. And what it does is instead of having a value with an index, we've got what we call a key value pair, where our value here is John and the key, or where it can be found, is in the key of name. And it's got a value of 30 that's key is age. And so there's a couple ways that I can look this up. Now, the first one is I can console log obj, which is object, right? Dot, and use dot notation. Now, this is a kind of a more popular way to do it and what we'll kind of do. And so I would encourage you guys to get used to doing this because whenever we get into React, you'll see that. But we just say dot the key name. So this case is name, and it will give us the value at that key. So if I come here and I run this, I get John. If I want to do the same thing with age, it just is the same thing. Or .log, I'm going to say obj. And I'm going to say .h. Now, oops, I did a comma, not a dot. Here we go. Cool. So now here, if I wanted to run this, I can get John in 30. Now notice 2 things. I did not do a semicolon after. JavaScript will interpret that for you. So if you don't do it, to an extent, it'll do that. Now, what's important though, is if you don't have this, this lets JavaScript know that this statement is done, right? And I have seen bugs where if people don't have it, the code continues and it thinks the next line is part of it. And then it kind of gets you into some issues. So if you're doing that, make sure that your statements, it's a more of a rare issue, but make sure your statements are finished by a semicolon. But again, if you just forget it, it's not going to be the end of the world. Now, there is another way to get a key or a value from a key, and I can say console.log. And that's by saying the object, so the object's name, and then the bracket, and then the key name within the bracket. So in this case, I'm just going to console this out. And I did that by doing the command or the Windows key, and then the question mark or slash. If you just do that, that'll automatically comment it out. So if I still do this, I should get John still, right? So I can call either by the key, or I can use what we call dot notation. Dot notation. Any questions on these? I know we're 5 minutes over, so we'll make sure that we make sure that you guys are taken care of. So somebody said, if we're saying undefined, is it like I'm waiting to assign a value to it? That could be part of it too, or you're looking for a value that doesn't exist, right? So if you are trying to console log, potato, right? But you don't have a variable called potato, it might just be undefined because it's saying I have no idea what that is. So also Tabitha, yes, it's control. I was a little bit confused when you said the alt, but thank you for putting that in there. Great. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is destructuring. Now, if I wanted to create a variable, so there's ways I could do it. If I wanted to basically take this value of 1 and I wanted to create a variable that had that value, I could say var first value equals array R position 0, right? I could do all of that. Let me console log. And let me get all that out. I could do that, right? But that is kind of a lot. And what JavaScript allows is for something called destructuring, and this is from ES6, to where instead of having to say something like var first value equals R position 0, instead of having to do all that, I can actually just do something like this, where I can say var first, because that's what I want to name this, equals R. And so what this is doing is this is going into my array, and it's symbolized by these square brackets. It's going into my array and it's grabbing the first value of that array, and it's defining it to this variable first. So now if I call first, I can have that. Now, if I wanted to get the second element in an array, I can actually just do a comma. And now what that comma is saying, okay, I don't want the first one, I want the second one. And I can destructure it to show that as well, right? So I can say comma second, and now there's a value called second that I can refer to or do something with as well. Same thing with third, I just add a comma. And then if I wanted to skip the 1, 2, 3, but I wanted the rest of the values, so I just wanted 4 or 5. I can just do this, this is where the first one, second one, third one comes. And then I do this ... rest, and that'll get me the rest of the values in order to have that information, right? It'll give me the rest of the values. And so now this rest is going to have an array of the values 4 and 5.
And you can name anything, right? First, second, third, it doesn't have to be like, it can be anything you want to name it. So that is not like associated with its precision.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's just the variable name that we're declaring for it. Yeah. Somebody asked a great question. How about a very long array? It'd be difficult to cut the commas. That's where you'd use like a slice. Not really going to use that in this class, but you could use the slice operator to take the values and just say, okay, I want from this position to this position, where I start, where I end, and how many. If you want to add in the third parameter, you can do that. You could do that for a very, very long array if you wanted, or you could you could use like a slice to start at a certain value and then do the rest of them at that. You could kind of combine the two. The spread operator is going to be great because what it allows us to do is it allows us to add in, this is something we're going to use, I promise, all the time. Once we get to state, managing state, we're going to use the spread operator. And that's basically us taking all of the values that we have and then spreading them out. And instead of having to like for loop through and push them to a new array or anything like that, I can use the spread operator here. And so what R2 is going to be is everything within R. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's also going to add that on to 6, 7, 8. So what R2 is going to be is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so the spread operator is going to become a very, very, very popular thing for us to use, or a really powerful thing for us to use when we get to state and managing state, to take all the values, spread them out, and meaning that we're going to, so like if I were to console.log R2, yep. And then I make sure this goes here. Cool. So now I have this entire array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's gonna be a really, really popular thing. So that's our spread operator. So this one, we're grabbing the rest. This one, we're spreading that out to concatenate or add it to another array.
When we I have a question about like, when we want to get the rest, is it always has to be 3 dots in front?
Yes. That's what JavaScript uses. Same thing with spread. But yeah. It does. It does have to be 3 dots. That's what signifies it. Spread is concatenating arrays, just adding them, or it allows a little bit more malleability, I guess, in a way, because I can signify this is where I want the rest of those values. This is also creating a new array versus having 2 arrays and then concatenating them.
So this is the only way to concatenate There is no other way to concatenate. Just
No.
yeah.
You could absolutely concatenate arrays. Like if I just had two arrays, R1 and R5, and one had just a value of 6, and I wanted to concatenate them, I could do that by literally just doing the plus sign and saying, this is combined together. So this is just a way, and it's kind of more of a higher level right now for the spread operator. But let's say we had a bunch of values when we're dealing with state and we're dealing with a user, right? We have a bunch of values and we're saying, cool, I have this new value. I want to take all of my old values. I'm going to spread them out and create and add them to my user. So my entire user has all of my information. That's really what we're going to use the spread about.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Somebody has to console log the destructured elements. Would it just be first? Yes, let's try to test it. So let's see right here. So let's console log. Best way is to always just test. Cool. So it's just saying console log third, because again, what it's doing is it's going in and it's doing this guy for us. Right? It's going and it's creating this, instead of me saying var first equals R of position 0. It's just, I'm just passing it the value and it's doing it for me. Great questions though. Cool. Great. Same thing with the object. So I can say something like, if I have this object and I want to get this name property, all I have to do is I say var, I do my curly brackets because it's an object, not an array, right? I say the key that I want. So in this case is name, and then I can get object. And then, so if I say console dot log name, doesn't like it because name's a deprecated value in JavaScript, but I get John. If I did age, do the same thing and go get that key and get 30. So I can get those values as well. And if I were to say name age, this should work. I still get age, but I could also console dot log name. And so now I can, those are destructured. So I can get John and 30. So you can just, by separating a comma, you can just add multiple keys in there. So if I want to get all of them, I could say name, age, city, and then console log age, name, and city. And then I'd be good to go. So it's destructuring. That's the assignment that you guys have. Obviously, you don't have to do it all today. But this is the assignment that this is your core assignment that you should be able to do now because you have all of this information. Somebody asked a great question. Why does name have a line through it? So I was just talking about names are deprecated. It'll say name is deprecated because it used to be a keyword in JavaScript, but now it's not. But then this linter, it's just my linter, which is kind of going through my code and trying to give me errors. That's not Java. That's not GitHub Copilot. That's just, I can't even remember, ESLint or something. That's just saying, hey, you might have a warning there. So somebody said, if I only want the name and the city in a destructor, yep, you just put city, you just put the key name. So like that, and then now it's destructured and you get New York, John. So you don't have to have all of them. Maybe you could just do city if you wanted to as well. Destructure is just taking that object, it associates the key within your object to whatever you're calling. And then there you go. It's New York.
Now, can you actually pass on the console.log, like for example, city, comma, name, and would it have the same result, or it cannot? It doesn't let you.
Let's check it. Like this. Should work because it's just like doing two variables. Just it. See if I can hear. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if it's the same as like what's the differences between JavaScript and Python. Like I keep hearing Python is an easier language, but so far, I mean, it's JavaScript is not that hard.
Yeah, they're pretty similar, transparently. There's a lot of nuancy things with JavaScript that are just like broken. JavaScript was built in 6 days, um, which is just insane. Obviously, it's been iterated upon a lot more since then. But they're both like dynamically typed, and then they both handle sort of like within a memory perspective. They both handle data a lot, very similar. The issue is like when you get into when we'll talk about ES5, like let and const and scoping, that can get a little bit confusing where Python just you don't even write, you don't even have to declare like var or anything. You just write a name and even either it redoes it or it creates a new variable. So it's a little bit easier in that perspective, but they're very similar. That's why they're kind of both two of the biggest and most popular languages. Cool. Great question. Great. That's all I have. So somebody said, what if you console log obj? That's it. You just get your object. Yep, it just gets you your object. We're not trying to iterate through. If I were to for loop through that, then it might give me something that like it's not iterable. But it depends on how we sort of set it up because we'd have to have like a key value thing. But in JavaScript, you can just take this object and then do something with it and handle it that way.
One last thing from me, I swear.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
So I did notice that you're using var, and I know that in the learning platform it says do not use var. It is old. Use only let and const.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's true. We haven't talked about ES6 yet. That's what we're talking about. So I was saying we'll talk about that tomorrow.
My
Um,
bad.
No, you're totally fine. It's var is older. That's how ES5 used to be, let and const. Now var still is, I would say, like don't throw the baby out with the bathwater sort of thing. There's still use cases and it's still also used. Not everybody uses let and const, right? Something if you get a job at I mean, especially like in the government, right? They are not very new in technology. And so I try to show you guys sort of, again, give you a little bit of a splash about a little bit about everything. We'll talk more about ES5 versus ES6, the power behind let, const, and var, what that's doing, where it's going, why we want to use let and const, and maybe where var might come in handy because there is a little bit of a difference. But moving forward, really anywhere we use var, we can use let, or we might use const. So that's great. Also, one thing I do want to point out is Spencer posted something in there. Let's say I didn't want this to be called name, but I wanted to create a new variable. All I have to do is say first name like this. And so by doing this guy, I'm saying, cool, I want to get this key, but I want my variable to be called this. So if I were to say like this, that now takes that value. And so I'm not really tied as much to that key. They don't have to be the exact same as long as I do this colon and then my new variable name of whatever it is. If this was unicorn, I could just do that too. Yeah, Jason said that the Washington State Bar is using still uses Visual Basic and XML. So yeah, governments are tough. So
They were not impressed with me talking about how outdated their systems were.
yeah, that checks out, turns out. But yes. Great. I know we're 20 minutes over. Are there any other questions that you guys have? Any other questions you guys have? Great. Well, then that'll be the end of class. I'll stop the recording here.